Okay, psychopathology, definitions of abnormality, statistical infrequency and deviation from social norms. Okay, statistical infrequency basically refers to you're something. Okay, so I think the example in the book is your IQ. So whatever it is that we're referring to, is a lot less, typically a lot less than the average for norm for the majority of the population. So it's worked out by looking at individuals in the population and like doing some kind of test. So the IQ is the IQ test, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah. Okay, so statistical infrequency. This is important for looking at people who are who lie outside of where they should be. So for IQ, it's important for predicting people who have delayed intellectual development. There's a name for that. I can't remember what the name is, but it's basically predicting. It's showing if you're low IQ, you kind of need some extra support, and we need to figure out why you're low IQ, okay? And then, but the criticism is that it doesn't take into account people who are on opposite ends. So say the average is here. I can't remember what the average for IQ is. I think it's 106. And then I think 76 and below is when you get the diagnosis of the delayed intellectual disability disorder. But then you can also have a really high IQ, and that's I don't want to say abnormal, but it is abnormal, but that's going to confuse me, but that's also abnormal because you're deviating, you're lying outside of what the average statistical infrequency what the average statistical is. So that's also statistical infrequency, but they're saying that any statistical infrequency is bad and we don't want that. But if you're really smart, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, that's statistical infrequency. So IQ and intellectual disability disorder is what we need to know. And then the other evaluation for that is the measures aren't always very accurate. So like the IQ test might not always measure IQ in the best ways, might be outdated, might lack like applicability to everyone. And I don't know if this is in the book, but it can also lead to self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you know you have a statistical infrequency such as a low IQ, you might have low expectations for yourself, or more importantly your parents and your teachers might have lower expectations for yourself just because you've been diagnosed with a low IQ. But realistically you might still be able to develop and function as not as well as somebody else, but still good. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, let me just check what the hell I just said and see if it's right. Okay. Statistical infrequency. Yes, so you are abnormal. I am allowed to say that. Example, IQ. Okay, so the average is 85 to 115. And only 2% of people have a score below 70, and that is when you get the intellectual disability disorder diagnosis. Evaluation, real-world application. It's an example of a tool used in the Beck Depression Inventory. A score of 30 plus is widely interpreted as indicating severe depression. Okay, so I think probably the most famous one is the IQ, but we can apply it to psychology to understanding like depression and other psychological disorders. Unusual characteristics can be positive, because that's what I said. Benefits versus problems. So that's kind of about self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, not all unusual people benefit from labels. Someone with a low IQ who can't cope with their chosen lifestyle would not benefit from a label. So it can just create negative stigma. I'm trying to revise. This is not always necessary. Okay, deviation from... Oh my god, why am I so popular? Okay, I'm back to psychology. Well, we're doing definitions of abnormality. Okay, so we've done statistical inadequacy. Now we're doing deviations from social norms. Okay, so this is when your behaviour, always put it on the wrong time, this is when your behaviour opposes the societal norms of the people around you and where you live. So social norms are specific, they're bound to where you live. So the social norms in England are going to be different to the social norms in Tanzania. Okay, so if your behaviour deviates from social norms, it's going against the standard behaviour in that area. Okay, so deviation from social norms could be you choose to not settle down, you don't work. Could it be like hygiene? I don't know if that's an example in the book, but I think it could be like your hygiene is bad, but yeah. Okay, so you're just deviating from any normal baseline behaviour. So let me just, in this book is antisocial personality disorder. Let me just check. Norms are specific to the culture we live in. So this also is about the societal views. So homosexuality would have been considered abnormal a long time ago, like the 80s, not really that long ago, but and that's a social norm. Then if you were homosexual in that time when it was considered abnormal or immoral, then you're going against the social norms, you're deviating. Okay, and then the example is the antisocial personality disorder. Okay, so antisocial personality disorder is like psychopathy, so you're aggressive and your behaviour opposes societal expectations of how we should behave and respond to people. So it's impulsive, aggressive and irresponsible. It's the absence of pro-social internal standards associated with failure to conform to lawful and culturally normative ethical behaviour. Okay, so for evaluation is... Okay, there's a lot of evaluation in terms of real-world application, social sensitivity. We can understand people who deviate from social norms, like they might have a disorder, like we need to look into that, interventions can take place. But then it is also socially sensitive to say somebody's behaviour is deviating from social norms. Because one, it might not necessarily be deviating from social norms that they're used to, like if they've moved from a different location. Two, to say somebody's deviating from the social norms, yes, they might be deviating from social norms, but it might just be that their norms are different to ours, such as like travellers. But I don't know if that's for this page, but I think you could say that. Okay, real world application. It's used in the schizotypal personality disorder. Strange is used to characterise thinking, behaviour and appearance of people with the disorder. And cultural and situational relativism. So yeah, it's different for people in different cultures because it's bound to where you live. And human rights abuses. Typically it's been used for women for nymphomania. Is that how you say it? Where was I reading that? Nymphomania, which is that's excessive sexual desire, but it's been so it can be used to create negative stigma. Okay, next page, definitions of abnormality. Failure to function adequately and deviation from ideal mental health. Okay, failure to function adequately is you do not conform to the expected standards of living that are laid out or are expected of you, I guess, or in society, I guess. So failure to function adequately is don't maintain, so I guess some examples would be you don't maintain a job, you don't maintain a fixed location, your hygiene is poor, that you fail to take care of your physical and mental needs, and definition. Let me just check. Okay. The example is intellectual disability disorder. Okay, so intellectual disability disorder is the low IQ thing. So that's failure to function adequately, because your functioning opposes the social average, or the average of the people. Okay, let's look at what the book says. So it says, when a person, so Seligman and Rosenhan have proposed additional signs that can be used to determine when someone is not coping. These include when a person no longer conforms to standard interpersonal rules, for example, maintaining eye contact and respecting personal space. Okay, so this can be used in a lot of diagnoses for like personality disorders, or I don't know if I can say that. I think it could probably be used to help diagnose people with autism. Okay, when a person experiences severe personal distress, and when a person's behaviour becomes irrational or dangerous to themselves or others. Okay, so failure to function adequately, you're not functioning in the way that is considered normal or the average of a society, and we are unable to maintain basic standards of nutrition and hygiene. So you're failing to function adequately. I think they say you're failing to function adequately if you miss having a shower more than one day. So I have a shower today, that's okay. Don't have a shower tomorrow, that's okay. The next day you need to have a shower. I watched a film about that once. And so it's just like basic hygiene standard rules. Okay. And the example is an intellectual disability disorder. Okay, evaluation creates negative stigma for people who we consider to be failing to function adequately according to our standards. But okay, so a new age traveller we would consider to be failing to function adequately because they do not have a fixed location. They probably do not have a job according to what we understand. And they move around a lot. So a new age traveller, but really that's just their way of life, and it's just they're not actually failing to function adequately, they're just opposing what we expect of ways of living. Okay, so new age traveller, adrenaline junkies, because one of the things is you're putting yourself at risk, and so an adrenaline junkie is likely to engage in risky or what we would perceive to be dangerous behaviour, such as jumping out of a helicopter. I can't remember what the other example is, but do I need to know? Spiritualists, okay. I don't know how that would relate to failure to function adequately. Would you take part in religious rituals communicating with the dead? Okay. And then, real world application is that it can be used to help diagnose certain disorders. Because I think probably like autism might be considered failure to function adequately, because a lot of the people on the autism spectrum cannot maintain eye contact, or other disorders they may lack hygiene rules. Okay, so mental disorders as well, like you're likely to lack standard hygiene rules if you're suffering with something like depression, or I don't know what else. And it can also be used because you experience severe personal distress that is not normal, or doesn't really make sense why you're experiencing that distress. It's like internal to you. Okay, however, it can again create negative stigma, and also failure to function adequately. But if you're would be considered low hygiene and stuff. But if you're like going through bereavement, or I don't know what else. Well, that's not a mental disorder. If you're just going through something that is causing you severe personal distress, are you necessarily failing to function adequately? Because we would expect somebody who's grieving to maybe not meet all of the, and this is for the second one as well, to meet all the criteria of functioning adequately. And that doesn't necessarily mean like an immediate intervention needs to take place, or that they are failing to function adequately, because our understanding of bereavement is that it probably would affect your hygiene, and it will make you distressed. But that doesn't mean that really you're not failing to function adequately, because it's considered normal to react to things like grief in that way. Okay. Yeah, okay. I did get it. It took me a while. Let me check the evaluation here. Represent the threshold for help. Okay, so I think Mind is the charity. Okay, Mind is a charity. 25% of people in the UK will experience a mental health condition. So this represents a threshold for help. Also, it's really useful in narrowing down people who really need immediate help. So if you're failing to function adequately, we can recognise that you do need immediate, or you need help, you need psychological intervention. And that benefits the economy because it's narrowing down the number of people who need help, which one, it means it's benefiting like the NHS. Then they don't have to provide help to everyone. They can say, well, are you failing to function adequately? And if you meet the criteria, then you can be offered help, instead of offering help to every single person in the world who's having a bad day and thinks, yeah. Okay, so failing to function adequately, a threshold for help, and then it can also be used for real-world application and economic implications and economic benefits, because it can help people get back into work if we're recognising that failing to function adequately and we need to give them help to get them back into work. Okay, and then social sensitivity again, because stigma. Okay, represents threshold for help, discrimination and social control. It's very hard to say when somebody is really failing to function adequately. I think it is, because it kind of says like, when a person no longer conforms to standard interpersonal rules, but who is laying out those standard interpersonal rules? Like, if you miss brushing your teeth, you're not failing to function adequately. Like, it's kind of hard to recognise when somebody actually is failing to function adequately genuinely, or if it's just a one-off behaviour, or it's just their standard interpersonal rules. Maybe do not meet the criteria of what we're laying out for them, because they can sometimes be a bit like harsh or a bit too expecting too much. It's expecting too much for you to brush your teeth twice a day. Okay, discrimination and social control. Not having a job or permanent address might seem like failing to function adequately. Okay, so this is what I said about New Age travellers, base jumpers and spiritualists. They're not failing to function adequately necessarily, it's just their ways of living. And failure to function may not be abnormal. This is what I was trying to say. Okay, so there are some circumstances which most of us fail to cope for a time, e.g. bereavement. It may be unfair to give someone a label that may cause them future problems just because they react to difficult circumstances, because this reaction to difficult circumstances is what we would expect, and their bereavement process is a healthy process that we go through. So you're not failing to function adequately if you're going through the grieving process. You need to go through it. Okay, deviation from ideal mental health. Who did this? I think it was a female psychologist, and I think she... let me just check who did it. Marie Jahuda. And she laid out criteria for deviation from ideal mental health. So this is severe anxiety, I think lack of hygiene. Let me just check. Okay, so we are in good mental health if we meet the following criteria. We have no symptoms of distress. Whatever that means. We are rational and can perceive ourselves accurately. Okay, so this can link to congruence. You need to have a state of congruence. Your ideal self kind of needs to be in relation to your current self, and you can't, if you perceive yourself to be like really, if you have really negative feelings towards yourself, you do not have good mental health. We self-actualise. We self-actualise, strive to reach our potential. We can cope with stress. We have a realistic view of the world, so we're not really pessimistic. Like somebody who's really pessimistic is not in good mental health. Okay. We have good self-esteem and lack guilt. We are independent of other people, and we can successfully work, love and enjoy our leisure. and there is some overlap between deviation and failure to function adequately. The evaluation is, again, it can represent help to represent a threshold for help, and you can look at this at home or not home. So this is good for the economy and time saving, because if you think my mental health is not very good, but is it that my mental health is not very good, or is this just normal feelings? Well, you can look up ideas about deviation from ideal mental health. I'm about to run out of time. Okay, I'm going to be really quick. And then realise, well, no, I am deviating from ideal mental health. Maybe I should seek help. So it gives people a chance to personally recognise when they need to seek help. And it can help psychiatrists and psychologists intervene when we see somebody needing help. It can be useful in schools when teachers recognise a student might need help because they're failing to meet this criteria that Jehodes laid out. Socially sensitive, it can have negative implications, negative stigma, because the criteria that Jehodes laid out is quite harsh and all-encompassing. Like, you do not necessarily have bad mental health if you're feeling guilty or you're unable to cope with stress as well, because a lot of teenagers and a lot of young people are going to be coping with stress, particularly around like A-levels and exams, and that doesn't necessarily mean you need immediate psychological intervention. Again, like the bereavement, it could just be a normal psychological process we would expect people to go through. Okay. A comprehensive definition, so I said that, may be culture bound. Jehodes' criteria was firmly located in the context of the US. So again, to impose it onto other cultures and countries may not be very good, because we may think, well, this is how we perceive good mental health to be, but in another country, such as China, their ideas of good mental health may be different. So it's a very comprehensive and harsh criteria, but also it's limited to individualistic cultures, particularly the US. Even in the UK, we might look at this slightly differently. Maybe culture bound, okay, I said that. Extremely high standards, okay, so that's the same job. Okay, so that's definitions of abnormality. Right now, phobias. I'm going to take a quick break because I've never talked so much in my life.